This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Thursday, October 27th, 2022, and we're so glad you could join us for today's show. And in today's show, we will have the latest edition of Between the Pods. And as always, we will have a check of the ag weather outlook as well. But first, let's run down the closing markets.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
At the end of another trading day, we are joined now by Jacob Burks of agmarket.net. Jacob, what did we see today in the grains?
I saw a pretty mixed bag of trades today. Pretty quiet, lower volume. Corn market ended up settling a couple of pennies lower. Basically all across the board, all the way out into 2023 market. The wheat market followed suit with 2 cents lower. You get into the Kansas City wheat, we ended up being 8 or 9 cents lower on the day. Spring wheat out in Minneapolis, 5 to 6 lower. Bean market up 2 cents here today. So you saw a kind of reversal of the crush spread that we've been seeing. Soybean meal was actually up $7 on the day, and then you saw the bean oil actually take a negative dip here and went about $1 lower here. So just a little bit of quiet trade, but some reversals along the way here today.
Jacob, we've seen some of those basis numbers really high right now, and in fact, maybe even some record highs for just in the last several years. But what is that doing to the markets?
Well, I think it's keeping it strong. I mean, we haven't really seen the big harvest pressure that everybody typically gets used to, and as you know, as a matter of fact, you're seeing the strong futures market with basis falling off along the river. If you'd have told me the river was going to be at 70 to 80% capacity, and our basis levels were going to stay relatively strong, I'd probably laughed at you earlier this year. But basis is telling us one thing mostly. Obviously, our export numbers are down a little bit. But the processing side of it, the feed side of it, so your ethanol and your feed, they're strong. They're going to stay strong, and I think that's what basis is telling us. The need for corn, especially to the western part of the Corn Belt, is very high.
What are we seeing as far as competition from Brazil with some of the low-price grain that they have available?
Well, we're first of all, U.S. is going to be the most expensive wheat and corn out there, and you're uncannily seeing some South American corn exports this time of year, which is not usual. So that's something that we have to face too from the export market. That's another part of the reason why our exports are lower. What we are exporting is still going down the river. We actually saw more this year than last year go out so far through the river. But South American production, I think that China obviously does not want to buy corn and beans from us, and in their corn and beans are actually at record high prices. But they're doing all they can do to go hand in mouth until they get to that South American production. So that competition, not just now, but in the future, is really what we have to fight against as far as the exports to come. And with the record potential yields that they could see, the record potential planting acres that's going in right now, that does serve. That's why the USDA cut about 300 million bushels from our exports.
Jacob, with the Mississippi River, we did finally get a little bit of rainfall here in the Midwest and along the Mississippi River Basin. Has it done enough to affect that at all? Have the river levels gone up enough to change anything? Or are we still in a waiting pattern and just trying to deal with those low river conditions and see what may come down the line?
That's a good question. I mean, we were on a meeting this morning, and some of our guys in St. Louis were talking about the 2 inches of rain that they got right there. Did a good job. I can't remember exactly how high it raised it. The Mississippi River has already came up, and now it's starting to go back down. We do have to have those follow-up rains, or it doesn't solve any real problem. To me, it sounded like it's kicked the can down the road, where we're getting some more boats that are a little bit more opportunity to get what we have on the river down the river. However, what's coming onto, we're hearing different ABC plants that are river facilities that are not taking any corn right now too. So that's become a major problem. So what we're talking about, strong basis outside the river area, those type of closures, those type of movements like that, without getting more rain and filling that river up, we won't be able to see basis stay steady anymore. You'll see the markets really falling apart from the local basis along the river.
What have we learned on the livestock market today?
Well, we learned that the hogs did not enjoy the export numbers that came out today. About half of what they were last week. Probably in an overbought situation as we went into this report today. Just a normal export sales number came out pretty negative, and I think that's just what took the market to kind of start to roll over a little bit. They built the Commitment Traders report has them at a 35,000 long position. I think you saw a lot of that go away today. You saw a big move in the spread again between December and February that widened back out. So, it looks to me like it was a little bit of a technical push lower, just from being in a position where cash is starting to pull back a little bit in the hog number. Your packer basis levels kind of took a move for the worse here this week. So all in all, cattle, the live cattle have stayed strong, have been strong. There's a little bit of negative today, being down 15 cents lower. I don't consider this a really bad trade day. You saw the feeder cattle come off about 50 or 60 cents. So, all in all, I would look at today's, chart action and probably say we've got a little bit of a turnaround here in the feeder cattle. We're starting to see them come off of some of these recent highs. In the live cattle market, we know the story about how many cattle are available. And it depends on what this demand side does of it. If you look at the stock market and what we've seen there, we've stayed relatively strong. We've had another bounce back here with the hope of easing some of the interest rate hikes. So, right now you look at this as kind of a steady day.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for the analysis. How can our viewers get in touch for more information?
We encourage everybody to go to agmarket.net. Take a look at our 30-day free trial of our Intel. That'll get you kind of all of our information. We encourage you to take a look at the meeting we're having in Nashville on February 5th and 6th, and we'd love to see you there.
He's Jacob Burks from agmarket.net. Jacob, thank you for the time today, and we'll look forward to speaking again soon.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
That was Jacob Burks from agmarket.net, and now we'll take a look at the closing numbers, courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart.
December corn is down 2 3/4 at 6.82 1/4. November soybeans up 1/2 cent at 13.82 1/4. Soybean meal for January up $5.90 at 407.90. Soybean oil for January down 81 cents at 69.56. Chicago wheat down 2 even at 8.38 1/2. Minneapolis wheat down 1 1/2 at 9.50 1/2. Kansas wheat down 8 1/2 at 9.32 1/4. December oats up 2 even at 3.58 1/2. On the Merc, live cattle for December down 15 cents at 153.42. November feeder cattle down 70 cents at 178.12. Lean hogs for December down $3.37 at 85.12. Pork cutouts for December down $1.22 at 95.50. And Class 3 milk for November up 3 cents at $20.50.
And that's been a check of our ag market recap here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break now and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. And when we come back, we have our latest installment, our next segment of Between the Pods. That's coming up next. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. In today's show, we have the latest edition of Between the Pods. It's a show where we take a look, learn all about the Iowa soybean. In today's segment, I talk with Mike Steenhoek, Executive Director of the Soy Transportation Coalition.
It's time to go between the pods with the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network and the Iowa Soybean Association. For the next year, we will explore the ways Iowa-grown soybeans are making a difference at home and around the world. Now, here's your host of Between the Pods, Mark Magnuson.
Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and we are here at the Iowa Soybean Association headquarters in Ankeny today, and I'm joined by Mike Steenhoek. And Mike, could you please remind me of your title here at Iowa Soybean?
I'm the executive director of an organization called the Soy Transportation Coalition.
And Mike is very important when it comes to discussing things about getting soybeans to different parts of the world, how that is done. And Mike, we know that soybeans are grown here in Iowa to a large degree, but then they move to places outside of our borders even. And sometimes soybeans here in Iowa can end up in places like Washington State to move off of our shores. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, so much of the soybeans that are grown in this state, particularly in the western part of Iowa, is crushed or processed into soybean meal and soybean oil. And then that resulting soybean meal is in many cases put on a rail car and then transported all the way to the Port of Grace Harbor in Aberdeen, Washington, where it's then exported from a facility owned by AGP. AGP is a large soybean processor based in Omaha, but that has a number of soybean processing facilities here in the state of Iowa. And that soybean meal is exported to a lot of customers throughout Asia, and for it to be used as a high protein feed for things like pork production and poultry production. So a lot of what's grown here in Iowa is ultimately consumed outside the United States, halfway around the world, but that infrastructure of rail to that port is really essential to that journey. So this current facility that is owned by AGP is currently underway of being expanded. And there was an announcement in this past March of essentially a doubling of their export capacity of that soybean meal. And it's largely inspired by this big trend within the soybean industry of processing more soybeans in order to have more soybean oil that can be used for that renewable fuels market. And what that does is going to provide a new opportunity for exporting soybean meal. This announcement by AGP is one of the most immediate ways of encouraging that greater export of soybean meal. So it's a very exciting development within our industry.
So Mike, in a way, is the money coming from farmers here in Iowa to help get that product out into the world and expand just the entire process? Yeah,
so we're really excited that a collection of 7 soybean farmer organizations, including the Iowa Soybean Association, the Soy Transportation Coalition, the United Soybean Board, and a handful of others, decided to commit some resources totaling $1.3 million to help underwrite some of the costs of this expansion of this soybean meal export capacity at the Port of Grace Harbor. So the company AGP is going to be investing funds for expanding their own facility, but then the Port of Grace Harbor, again, that's in Aberdeen, Washington, they're responsible for investing a substantial amount of money to increase their rail loading and unloading capacity. So what this funding is going to do from these soybean farmer organizations to help underwrite the cost of some of the pre-engineering, design, permitting expenses that are very necessary for that rail expansion project that the Port of Grace Harbor is assuming. So it's a really great partnership between industry within a public port authority and farmers all coming together to help make a project a reality. It's a great example of a public-private partnership.
So Mike, why is the expansion needed then? Is there just more growers growing soybeans right now? Is there a surplus of soybean meal in specific that is needing to be moved?
Well, with all of this current expansion of soybean processing, and then particularly all of the planned expansion of soybean processing, and again, that is primarily inspired by the need to have more soybean oil to satisfy this growing and burgeoning renewable fuels market. So because of all of that increased processing of soybeans here in the United States, it presents a question and an opportunity. What are we going to do with all of this additional soybean meal? And certainly some of that's going to be retained in the local area, fed to local livestock, but then also it's going to provide the necessity of exporting more of that soybean meal around the world. And so there's going to have to be new investments in export capacity, and this AGP facility is arguably the most immediate response to that. So when these soybean farmer organizations became acquainted with that and the opportunity to provide some investment to help facilitate this project, they really jumped at the opportunity because it's certainly going to be beneficial to the farmers in that area. So much of the beans that are grown in this vicinity of the country do get processed, do get exported from that AGP facility. And so then that expansion that's in the works, it's going to present new opportunities for more soybean meal expansion from these areas of the country and greater profitability opportunities for these farmers.
So the bottom line is what you're saying is it's good news for Iowa farmers because that demand is still there and it's continuing to even grow.
Yeah, and one of the altruisms within the soybean industry is that it's better to export meal than whole soybeans. Now, we always want to be enthusiastic about exporting more whole soybeans. It's a big part of our business and one of the big reasons why we're so successful. But the more you can migrate to exporting some of the higher value commodities or products like soybean meal, the more of the economic value gets retained here in the United States, gets closer to the farmers that actually grow the soybeans in the first place. And that's good for our industry. And so farmers really understand that, and that's one of the reasons why they're so enthusiastic about this project.
And you get that a lot, farmers that are invested in exactly what's happening across the world with soybeans, not just, they're not just thinking purely locally on growing the soybeans and taking them to the elevator.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that soybean farmers get as well as any other farmer, because when soybean farmers look at the pie chart where soybeans actually are destined, they see over half of that pie chart is labeled as international. So these farmers recognize that they can grow a crop and they can have demand for that crop, but they have to be able to have a transportation system that can connect it. So farmers can't just concern themselves with growing a supply. They also have to take steps to encouraging that demand, which includes international as well, but then also the infrastructure that's required to move that product from point A to point B. And that's what this Port of Grace Harbor expansion project aspires to do.
And Mike, I've noticed too that farmers that grow soybeans, they take pride in that because they know that international markets want soybeans from this part of the world because they're such high quality.
Yeah, it's very high quality, and farmers are really looking for those opportunities to invest these dollars in a way that really moves the needle. And they're stewards of these funds on behalf of their fellow farmers. So when there's an opportunity that they can invest in something that's very relatable, that's very tangible, that their fellow farmers can see, oh, that's going to help increase the movement of what we grow to the ultimate customer, they really embrace that opportunity. So this is something that we can, with great pride, we can share with other farmers. This is an investment that you helped make that's going to result in greater marketing opportunities, not just in the United States, but particularly overseas.
Mike, you had mentioned the term soybean crush earlier. We've talked about meal and oil. So the crush process is how you get to the two byproducts, meal and oil. And we know from the push towards making sure that we have more renewable fuels, more biodiesels, those types of things, that oil is very important and very in demand. So is there enough demand then for the soybean meal side of it that comes along with all of that oil?
And that's one of the big questions that we're presented with is, with all of this increased soybean crush or soybean processing, what are we going to do with all of this additional soybean meal? And a lot of people are encouraged by the prospect of having maybe a more robust livestock industry in the United States, where we're maybe exporting ultimately more meat because we have more abundant soybean meal that we can feed to that livestock. Will that have a positive impact on our domestic livestock industry? We hope so, and we're optimistic about that. But the consensus also is we need to also have more opportunities to export that soybean meal, because it won't all be absorbed here in the United States by our livestock sector. We also have to export more of that. And that's encouraging as well. But what that means is we have to have increased export capacity. And new facilities and expanded facilities like what AGP and the Port of Grace Harbor is doing is, again, that most immediate response to that. And we envision additional investments like this in the future to be able to capture on this opportunity of exporting more soybean meal.
Mike, is there anything else you'd like to let our viewers know about when it comes to projects like this that are currently happening in the world of soybeans and really the processes that we've talked about today in order to move that meal and oil into the world?
Well, one of the cardinal rules in supply chain is don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And the more you can have a diverse, robust set of options for your supply chain, you as an industry, you as a shipper, and it goes down to the farmer will benefit. So we do a lot of things to encourage our current arteries, like barge transportation down the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico. But one of the other areas that's very important to us is the Pacific Northwest. That's our number 2 export region. 25% of soybeans leave year in and year out from export terminals in the Pacific Northwest near Seattle and near Portland. And so this AGP project at the Port of Grays Harbor is just another way of encouraging a diverse supply chain. The more we can do that, the more we're competitive in the future.
He is Mike Steenhoek. Mike, thank you so much for the time once again, and it was great talking with you. Have a great rest of your day.
Hey, thank you.
That was Soy Transportation Coalition Executive Director Mike Steenhoek in this week's edition of Between the Pods. As for right now, let's take a look at the ag weather outlook. Well, so far this week, we've had a little bit of a similar pattern to what we saw a week ago. It's been a slow and steady, gradual warm up throughout the week. And now today we've gotten some showers in northwest Iowa, some cloudy skies in central Iowa, and a little bit of sunshine in the eastern portion of the state. But as we turn our attention tomorrow, I think we are going to have an even better day. Let's go ahead now and look at what the National Weather Service has in store for the next 24 hours.
As you can see from the National Weather Service, today we have cloudy skies in central Iowa, partly sunny skies in the east, and showers in northwest Iowa. Temperatures range from the mid-50s to about 60. Tonight, mostly cloudy skies across the state. We will have chances for showers in the northwest. Lows overnight should range from mid-30s to upper 30s. Tomorrow, a beautiful day. Partly sunny to mostly sunny skies across most of the state. Highs in the low 60s. Looking at the affiliate weather map for tomorrow, Cherokee will see sunny skies with a high of 63. Shenandoah mostly sunny with a high around 63 as well. Des Moines mostly sunny and a high of 61. Albia mostly sunny and 61. Waterloo sunny and 63. And Clinton going to be partly sunny with a high of 60.
For a more detailed forecast in your part of the state, check with your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. And that's been a check of the Ag Weather Outlook. That also brings us to the end of this episode of Ag Matters PM. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can find our video content and previous episodes of AM PM on our YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure you subscribe. Also hit the notification icon, the bell. That lets you know whenever we get our latest content posted to YouTube. You're going to find out about it right away. Don't forget our free twice daily market podcast, wherever you find your favorite podcast on Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. On behalf of Riley Smith and Dustin Huffman, thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.